Look at this beggar in rags.
You are beggar.
Can't even buy bread.
No one paid attention to the man standing at the edge of the village road. His clothes were torn, his shoes were worn out. Dust covered his shoulders like he belonged to the road itself. People assumed he was just another failed soul returning home with nothing. But what they didn't know was this. That man had just returned from the United States after 20 years, and he was a billionaire. He didn't come back to show his success. He didn't come back to remind anyone of his name. He came back with one question burning inside him. If I lose everything, who will still respect me? The village had changed. New shops, new houses. But one thing remained the same. Respect was still sold to the highest bidder. As he walked forward, conversations stopped. Eyes judged him before words did. One man whispered, "Another useless returnee." Another laughed. America couldn't fix him. The billionaire heard everything. He said nothing. Silence was part of the test, because sometimes the truth about people only appears when you have nothing to offer them. If you believe real respect has nothing to do with money, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story, because this is just the beginning. The next morning, the man walked through the heart of the village. He entered a small shop. The shopkeeper looked at him once, then looked away. "Do you sell bread?" the man asked calmly. The shopkeeper replied without even turning, "We don't give credit here." "I can pay," the man said. The shopkeeper laughed. "With what? Your dreams?" People nearby laughed too. The man stepped back, dignity intact. He remembered boardrooms in New York, people who stood when he entered. Here, he wasn't even worth eye contact. Old friends passed him. Some recognized him, but recognition didn't come with respect. It came with embarrassment. They crossed the road, pretended not to see him, because poverty makes people uncomfortable, and rags make memories inconvenient. That evening, gossip spread. A man has returned from America. Curiosity grew, but when people saw his clothes, interest died instantly. In that village, success was worn, not lived. By the third day, the young women had noticed him. Not because they cared, but because he claimed to have come from America. A group of girls stood nearby as he passed. One said loudly, "If that's America, I don't want to go." Another laughed, "Look at his clothes, even the dust rejected him." One girl stepped closer and asked mockingly, "So what did you bring us from America?" He replied softly, "Experience." They laughed harder. "Experience doesn't buy handbags," one said. "Or a future," another added. They walked away together. The billionaire stood still, not angry, not hurt, just observant. Because gold diggers don't need gold. They just need hope of it. And when hope disappears, so does interest. That night he sat alone, not because no one wanted him, but because no one wanted him without money. At the edge of the village lived a poor girl. Her house was small. Her life was hard. Her days were long. She worked to support her family. No makeup, no jewelry, just honesty. She saw the man sitting under a tree holding his worn bag. She didn't ask where he came from. She didn't ask what he owned. She simply said, "You look tired. Please drink some water." He looked up, surprised. Not by the water, but by the kindness. They spoke. She told him about her struggles, about people who looked down on her, about how poverty teaches patience. She said something quietly that stayed with him. People who respect money more than humans will always be poor inside. He smiled. For the first time since returning, he felt seen. Days passed. The poor girl continued to treat him the same. Whether he wore rags, whether others mocked him, she never changed. One evening, the man asked her, "If I had nothing, would that matter to you?" She replied without hesitation, "I already know you have nothing, and that hasn't changed how I see you." That night, the billionaire couldn't sleep. 20 years of wealth, endless success, yet one honest sentence meant more than everything he owned. He stood up, looked at the village lights, and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would leave, and when he returned, he would return as himself, not in rags, but in truth. Subscribe and share this story, because what happens next will expose everyone's real intentions. The sun was rising slowly over the dusty village. The billionaire walked toward the same tree by the well where he had met the poor girl. She was already there, sweeping the yard, humming softly to herself. When she looked up and saw him, her face lit up with a gentle smile. No questions, no judgment, only warmth. He sat beside her quietly, leaving his bag on the ground. "Good morning," she said simply. He nodded. No grand words, no boasts, no stories of the city. Instead, they shared the little food she had prepared, a small piece of bread and water from the well. As they talked, he noticed the way she observed everything. Her eyes saw more than the village ever cared to see. Her questions were simple, but her thoughts were deep. "Why did you come back?" she asked, finally. He paused. "Because I wanted to see who truly respects a person when they have nothing," he said softly. She didn't flinch. She simply nodded, accepting the answer without awe or envy. Meanwhile, villagers noticed them talking. "Why is she talking to him?" one whispered. "Doesn't she know he's poor?" another laughed. "Who wastes time with a beggar?" But she ignored them. She continued sweeping. She offered him a smile, as if she didn't care what anyone thought. The billionaire watched silently. For the first time, he realized true friendship isn't built on wealth, status, or appearances. It is built on honesty, patience, and human connection. And slowly, a bond began to grow, a bond that the village had never expected. The following day, the poor girl brought him a small piece of bread and some fresh water. The moment a group of young girls spotted them together, laughter erupted. "Look at her, helping a beggar," one sneered. "She thinks she's better than the rest of us," another said. They whispered, pointed fingers, and giggled as they passed by. The poor girl didn't look at them. She didn't argue. She continued to offer kindness as if the insults were invisible. The billionaire felt a strange mix of admiration and sadness. He realized that when someone chooses to act kindly in the presence of cruelty, they reveal the strength that money can never buy. Later that night, as he sat under the tree, he thought about his life in New York, boardrooms, applause, contracts, wealth, and he understood even millions could not buy the simple dignity and honesty that the poor girl offered freely. In that moment, he knew the village would never see him the way she did, and that made her presence even more priceless. Night fell over the village like a blanket. The billionaire walked alone through empty streets, letting the cool night air clear his mind. Memories of the United States flooded him. The skyscrapers, the glittering lights, the deals, the wealth. He had everything a person could dream of. And yet, here in this quiet village, he felt something he had not felt in decades. Emptiness. He realized that wealth can create admiration, but it can also hide the truth. People praised him for his money, but no one ever saw the person behind the fortune. Except one. The poor girl had seen him, not for his wealth, not for what he could give, but for who he was. He knew what he must do. The next step of his plan was coming tomorrow. It was time to test the village, one final time. The sun rose, painting the village in warm, golden light. He walked past the shops, past the fields, past the familiar, dusty roads. Everywhere he went, the reactions were the same. The shopkeepers ignored him. The arrogant girls laughed at him openly. Even old friends crossed the street to avoid him. He observed everything quietly, noting every look, every whisper, every gesture. People loved money more than people, and rags made them uncomfortable. But there she was, the poor girl. She stood by the well, exactly where she had been every day. Her expression hadn't changed. Her respect for him had not wavered. No applause, no admiration, just kindness. He felt a calmness he hadn't felt in years, because he had found what he was looking for, someone whose heart was worth more than all the wealth in the world. Tomorrow he would leave, and when he returned, everything would change. By evening, he was gone. The next morning, whispers spread through the village. Where did he go? Was he ever really here? Was it all a trick? The arrogant girls laughed, mocking his absence. He was nothing anyway, they said. Who cares? But the poor girl waited silently. She didn't know where he went or why, but she trusted him. She had learned a valuable truth. A person's value isn't measured by what they wear or what they own, but by how they treat others. The billionaire had left behind a question the village could not answer. Who is truly valuable when nothing is offered? And soon the answer would return, and it would shock them all. The village was quiet that morning, but whispers had already spread. The man from America, he's back. But when they saw him, no one recognized him immediately. Gone were the torn clothes. Gone were the dusty shoes. He walked confidently, wearing a suit that gleamed in the morning sun. A luxury car parked by the roadside caught everyone's attention. Eyes widened, mouths fell open. The arrogant girls were the first to notice. "Is that?" one whispered. "No, it can't be him," another gasped. He stopped by the well where the poor girl stood. She looked up calmly. No awe, no excitement, just recognition. He smiled, not to show off, not to gloat, just a quiet, satisfied smile. The village finally realized the truth. The man they had mocked for his rags was the same man now dressed in wealth. And suddenly, the village had a new problem. They had judged him poorly before seeing his worth. As he walked through the village, reactions were immediate. Shopkeepers froze mid-step. Old friends dropped their baskets. Girls who had laughed at him before now whispered and looked down at their feet. One of the arrogant girls finally dared to speak. I didn't know it was you," she stammered. He nodded politely. No anger, no insult. Silence filled the streets. Every mocking comment, every cruel whisper, every rejection, they were now nothing compared to the truth standing before them. The poor girl, however, smiled quietly. She had seen him for who he truly was from the very beginning, and that made her more valuable than anyone else in the village. By mid-morning, the village gathered. People approached him with words that had never been spoken when he was in rags. "Please forgive us. We didn't recognize your worth. Can we help you?" The billionaire listened quietly. No harsh words, no humiliation. He understood that these apologies were not genuine. They came too late. They came only because appearances had changed. Yet he felt no anger, because revenge was never part of his plan. The lesson was already learned. People reveal themselves when given the opportunity. The arrogant girls whispered among themselves, regret flashing in their eyes. But words would not undo the years of judgment and pride.
Amidst all the chaos, one person remained constant, the poor girl. She walked toward him, just as she always had. No fear, no awe, no greed. She greeted him simply, "Good morning." That was all. He looked at her, and something deep inside stirred. 20 years of wealth, success, and fame could never replace the honesty, dignity, and kindness he had seen in her eyes. She had never wavered, never asked for anything, and that was more precious than all the gold, all the riches, all the admiration in the world. The billionaire had gathered the village. All the people who had mocked him, judged him, and laughed, they stood silently, waiting for him to speak. He paused. He could take their respect, their apologies, their admiration. He could flaunt his wealth and show them how wrong they had been. But he chose not to. He looked at the poor girl who had always treated him the same. And in that moment, he made a choice. The people who valued money over character would not define him. Only the ones with honesty, dignity, and heart mattered. The village learned a lesson without a single insult or humiliation, and as the sun rose higher, he knew the real test was over, and the reward, true companionship, respect, and love, had been found. The village square was quiet but full of anticipation. The billionaire had called everyone together. People who had mocked him, judged him, and laughed now stood silently, their eyes fixed on him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He simply said, "Respect is not earned by wealth, nor by appearances. Respect is earned by the heart, and some hearts never lie." He paused, looking at the poor girl standing calmly beside him. "Some of you only valued me when you thought I had wealth. Some of you rejected me because of what I wore, and some saw me as I truly am, even when I had nothing." The village hung in silence. It was clear who had passed the test and who had failed. The poor girl's eyes met his. No excitement, no greed, just honesty. And in that moment, the billionaire realized she had always been the one he had been searching for. The villagers looked on as he turned to her. "I came back to test the hearts of this village," he said softly. "But I did not come back to measure yours. You have shown me what wealth cannot buy: honesty, dignity, and kindness." She looked surprised. He continued, "I want you to live a life of respect, choice, and happiness. You will not need to struggle alone anymore. I want to share my life with you, if you will have me." The poor girl's eyes filled with tears. She had never imagined that her small acts of kindness, her patience, and her integrity would lead to this moment. The village held its breath, and slowly she nodded. "Yes," she said softly. The news spread like wildfire. The billionaire had chosen the girl who never sought wealth, the girl who had treated him with nothing but respect. The arrogant girls, the mocking neighbors, the shopkeepers who had refused him, all realized the truth too late. The village began to change. People started measuring each other by character, by deeds, by integrity, not by riches. Schools, community projects, and small businesses began to thrive under the guidance and generosity of the billionaire. But one rule was clear: respect those who are honest and kind, not those who are loud and greedy. The poor girl became a symbol of true humility. The girls who had mocked him, who had rejected him for his rags, now stood in silence.
They approached with hesitant smiles and forced apologies. He listened quietly, but he had already chosen. They had lost their chance. They learned the hard way that greed and judgment would never bring happiness. And the village remembered. Some people arrive to test your heart, and some hearts will pass while others fail. The billionaire and the humble girl had passed. The rest had learned too late. Months passed. The wedding was set in the village. The entire community gathered, not to celebrate wealth, but to celebrate heart, dignity, and true love. The poor girl looked radiant, but not because of jewelry or dresses. She looked radiant because her kindness and patience had been rewarded. The billionaire stood proudly beside her, not as a man to be envied, but as a man who had found what truly matters. The ceremony was simple, filled with joy, laughter, and blessings. As they exchanged vows, the villagers realized that life had given them a lesson. Wealth is temporary, pride fades, but honesty, dignity, and kindness last forever. And in that small African village, the man who once returned in rags and the girl who saw him for who he truly was began a life together, a life full of love, respect, and purpose. The story ended, but the lesson lived on forever.